I want to start off um, actually showing you a couple of examples and how we've done this analysis. The first example I'm going to show you is um, is a really successful profile. It's one of our top performers. And what we look at for that is we look at how many people see the profile and how many people contact it. And so in this case, you've got a 66% view to contact ratio, which means 2 out of every 3 clients who see this profile go on to contact the therapist. And I want to give you this example to start off with, and we'll kind of dissect what makes it work as we go and pull out some good lessons for you. I want to note a couple of things before I show you the content. The first is that Mental Health Match is set up with profile prompts. So instead of giving you just a blank empty screen, we ask some prompts in your profile. And that's based off of what we've researched and understood that clients want to know about you. So when you see this example, it's got those prompts. But you can still take away kind of the ideas from it. And we'll talk a little bit at the end about how you go from the examples we've shared to building out, a full profile when you're just given kind of that blank screen and start from scratch, or to build out your own website. The other thing that I want to share is this profile performs really well, but it's written kind of funny. Like there are some grammar choices I wouldn't make. There's some word choices I wouldn't make. The therapist talks about themselves in the third person, which I find kind of odd. But all of those things aside, it's really about the content and how it's connecting with folks that makes it successful. So here is, let's see, here is the profile. You'll see they say, my clients describe me as being so easy to open up to. Clients are often relieved after working with other therapists who are unprofessional and listen without guidance, which might not be your type of therapy, but the details don't really matter here. They talk about, I changed the name here just to be anonymous. But Emma's approach is to look for the root issues of many problems that you're facing. This can help you grow in many different areas of your life at an accelerated rate versus focusing on one situation at a time. Together, we'll face the growing resentment from years of feeling overlooked and overworked. We will learn and pursue your self-care and relationship needs. And as we focus less on what others think and more on what you need to be happy. I specialize in working with people who feel overworked and unappreciated. Her clients are the go-to person in their family, friend circle, and at work. Although they've checked all the boxes of what they're supposed to do, they question, who am I now and what makes me happy? And I became a therapist because it's her calling. She didn't have a healthy example of marriage and knew she had to break that family cycle. Something that stands out about where I offer therapy is that you'll never have to waste time coming in traffic. It's very helpful if you travel for work or prefer the comfort of home. So there's parts of this profile that might not work for every therapist, right? There's a little bit of self-disclosure. They talk about giving guidance that might not be for you, but the details don't really matter, right? What matters here is that they are using everyday language that really taps into the emotional needs of a therapy seeker. We're going to get into those emotional needs in a second. When I used to work in communications, we would always say that good communications are not creative, they're connective. And the same is true for a really good profile. You don't have to be a creative writer. You don't have to be a strong writer. You just have to be able to connect with somebody who is in a difficult emotional place. And thankfully, you have so much training and experience doing exactly that. So that's one of our top performing profiles. I'm going to show you the other side so that we have a little bit of contrast. And so in this case, this profile is one of our 4 performing profiles. It has a 0% view to contact ratio, which means not a single client who sees this profile ends up contacting this therapist. This person their profile has been viewed 400 times in the past 60 days, and nobody went on to contact them, right? And so they're probably wondering, like, why am I getting crickets? Like, this is what works. And a lot of it has to do with the content of this profile. I'll also note, compared to the last one, kind of the bare minimum of 3 prompts is filled out, but that's really not the only thing going on. So let's take a look at this lower performing profile. They say, my clients describe me as a compassionate listener who provides a safe space with an integrative approach. Something to know about my approach is incorporating a mind-body approach to the counseling process. I'm aimed to be a resource and a guide for clients. I assist in the learning of their unique needs, a rediscovery of strengths, and an identification of which supportive modalities work best. Together, we'll gain confidence in the ability to navigate strong emotions that naturally arise in life and cultivate a direct path back to our authentic selves. This ultimately leads us to finding more balance, joy, and meaning in life. So this one clearly is not connecting with clients, which we know from the data. And we're going to get into some of that why as we kind of thread these two examples throughout the webinar. But in general, it's very jargony, right? It doesn't actually connect with experiences that people have or use language that really connects emotionally with people, right? So the top performer we just saw, they said, hey, my clients are overworked and unappreciated. And this one says, oh, we'll help you navigate strong emotions that naturally arise in life. Like one really is felt emotionally, and one is like a little bit different, harder to feel. And so we're going to figure out as we kind of dive into these examples and dive into some research why these aren't performing so well. And this kind of analysis, where we look at the content of profiles that have a high view to contact ratio and compare it to those that have a lower one, is the analysis that we've done on thousands of different therapist profiles. And this is what we're bringing you today when we talk about the 6 tips, the lessons we've learned, the templates that we're going to share today. Before we get into those key lessons, it's really important that we step back a second and think about therapy seekers in general. I love this photo. When I was doing messaging work for social change organizations, I often said like, this was my, this is what I look like. This is my my persona. But you know, you can't really write a therapist profile without thinking about the audience of therapy seekers. You know, who do you hope is going to reach out to you? Who are your ideal clients? What's going through their minds? We do a lot of user research with people looking for therapists. We sit down with them, we talk to them, we watch them use different profile sites. And there's a really common theme that we see among people who are looking for a therapist. They are overwhelmed, they are uncertain, and they feel alone. This shouldn't be surprising. These are feelings that help drive people to seek therapy in the first place. But what's really important is that these feelings are present when people look for a therapist. So just as you develop a relationship with someone in your therapy room to help move them out of a state of overwhelm, uncertainty, and of loneliness, your profile should do the same thing, right? And it's funny because profiles often don't. So if someone came in for an appointment and they were feeling all of these things, would you start talking to them in a bunch of advanced clinical jargon that they might not recognize? Probably not, right? Would you rush to remind them of other negative things or all the negative things going on in their life? Probably not. And yet so many profiles we see do exactly that. You know, they ask all these negative questions. Is life awful and overwhelming? Are you hurt? You know, are your relationships crumbling? And then they give you a lot of clinical jargon. And that's not what you would do with a client who's got these, you know, presenting emotions when you're in a therapy space with them. And that's not what you should do with your profile either. Um, More importantly, when someone's feeling overwhelmed and uncertain, it's really difficult for them to use logical reasoning to make a decision and take action and do future planning. And so it's not just that a poorly written profile might not do well compared to a really good profile. It's that a poorly written profile just might not turn somebody into a therapy user at all. Like they just might not go to therapy. And in fact, that's actually how I started Mental Health Match. Was I started interviewing people about how they found a therapist, and so many people said, you know, it was such a hard process that I just gave up entirely. And so it's really helpful to keep these emotions in mind as we go through this webinar and as you write your profile. In fact, it might be even easier to write a profile if you have a very specific person in mind. Like if you think about a specific client who came to you for a first appointment, and write a profile that was geared towards them, because you know how to develop a connection with those individual people. You've developed a connection with that person. And it's really important to help keep that in mind to help you write a profile that also makes that connection. And there's one other thing that's super important before we get into the lessons to point out, and that is that half of all the traffic looking for a therapist is doing so on their phone, right? And so, they're not just viewing your profile and reading all of the information on its own, they're skimming and scanning. And, if you think about the last time that you were scanning through something on your phone, maybe it's like a list of restaurants or dating profiles or Facebook posts, think about your mindset then, right? Um, Here's what you probably were not doing: reading all the things, looking up words that you don't know, having deep reflection about what you were seeing, right? Instead, you were scanning, you're probably in a reactive mode. "Ah, I don't like that, I'm going to move on." And that's exactly what people do when they look for a therapist on their phone. And so when you think about those first two examples that we looked at, one of them you scanned and you saw words like overworked and unappreciated, words that kind of jumped out and maybe kind of connected with you emotionally. And the other one, integrative approach, rediscovery of strengths, you don't really scan that with anything kind of popping out at you. Nothing creates that immediate reaction. And when somebody's on their phone and they're feeling overwhelmed and they're scanning, they're very in a reactive state. And so we're going to help talk about that. But the big point here is that the first connections a therapy seeker has with your profile are really, really important, because most people will react to those and either move on or decide to dig deeper. So, unless you wrote people in at the beginning and feel like a connection at the beginning, they're probably not going to make it through to the end. And that's true whether it's your profile or it's your website. So that's where people are at. Now, what do therapy seekers want to feel, and what should your profile help them feel? Um, they want to feel hope. They want to feel connection. They want to feel reflected. And this is probably not too different than what people want when they come to therapy with you, right? Um, and all of this means is you have this training, right? Like, how to sit with somebody and move them from a place of loneliness and overwhelm to a place of feeling connected and hope. And that is all we got to do in our profile. So it's all about tapping into those skills that you already have. And now, to help you kind of figure out how to do that through language and through a profile, there are 6 tips that we want to offer you. Again, everything here comes from actual data that we've looked at. We've then tested some of these tips and helped therapists rewrite their profiles to see what actually worked to increase the amount of referrals that they got. And so everything that I'm sharing with you, I feel very confident can work for you as well. So here's the first tip: use words of connection. And by words of connection, I mean words like "we" and "together." They're words that connect with a client and show a relationship between the two of you. Um, we really believe in Mental Health Match that the therapeutic relationship you have with a client actually starts when they come to your profile for the first time and develop a sense and its assumptions about you and a sense of who you are. And so in this way, your profile is an invitation to create a relationship with a client. And that works because that's what therapy seekers actually want too. They want that relationship. And words like "we" and "together," they help show that relationship in action. They help create the foundation and say, yes, like, let's work together. Let's create something both together. And we see this often, like, you could say a lot of things. So for example, one way to use this is to say something like, "together, we'll create a plan to move forward." But so many profiles don't do this. They say things like, "I help my clients create plans to move forward," which is true, but it's missing out on that connection. So instead of that, instead of saying, "I help my clients do X," you could say, "Together, we will do X," right? We're going to do that. And so that really helps just create a foundation of action with you. So lots of words about "we" and lots of words about "together." That just helps calm clients who are feeling alone and start them thinking about the relationship that they could form with you, which is exactly what we want a profile to do. And it's also probably mirrors what you would do in a first session with somebody, where you talk about goals and what you want to work on together. Yeah. We can't talk about connection without talking about photos and profile photos. And so I want to talk about photos for a second, and we'll get back into the language stuff. Um, Photos make a really big impact because they are given the most visual real estate of a profile. They're what you see when you are scanning through a list of profiles. It's an image, it's not text, it just pops out at you, right? And we're humans, we like to see other people. So there's a lot we could say about photos. I'm going to give you the first couple of headlines here, but if you are interested in really diving deep into all the research we've done on therapist photos and headshots, we have a free guide here. Just go to bit.ly/therapist photos. It'll take you right there. You can look at it and kind of dig deeper into what I'm about to say. So what makes for a connective photo? There's really one thing, and it's not a fancy shot or fancy clothes or a fancy background. It's eye contact. So here are a couple of examples. I will say that they are stock photo. I'm not using actual therapists images in here. I wanted to keep things anonymous when I show you examples. But the person on your left, you see right to their eyes, right? They stop you in your tracks. And the eyes just aren't there. They're right in the center. Like there's no missing them. You look at the photo and your eyes go right into their eyes. And that is how humans make connection. We look at each other, right? And we make eye contact with each other. And that is what is very important in your photo. The example on the right, you don't really see their eyes. There's a glare, they're too far back. And so you miss that connection. So when we look at profiles that perform really well and we look at photos versus those that don't, we see eye contact. That is the overwhelming number one thing that we see. Let me give you one more example. You can hear, again, the one on your left, it's going right in your eyes. The one on the right, the eyes are further back. You can't really see them. More importantly, this person is standoffish, right? They've got their arms folded. They're looking slightly down at you. That is not a strong relationship building stance. I'll say like the one on the left, it's not perfect. They should probably take a step back. They're like a little too close. But you see the point. One, and you can see the eyes, the other you can't. So it's really important when we talk about connection that you also have a photo that makes that connection, and you do that through eye contact. Okay, so first two lessons we use words like we and together more than we use words about my client or eyes. And we know we've got to have a photo making good eye contact. What comes next? The next lesson that we learn is about the word you. So we talked about word we. The word you is a really interesting one. So when we took all of our profiles and we did a language analysis, we saw that you was a frequently used word in both the top performing and the lowest performing profiles. So we're like, that's interesting. Let's look a little bit closer. And when we look closer to the profiles, we saw that it really depended on how you use the word you. The lower performing, the worst performing profiles, the ones that don't get referrals, use the word you in context to a number of negative related issues that could evoke defensive-ness, they could evoke overwhelm, they could evoke shame. They say things like, do you have a drinking problem? Does life feel out of control for you? Are you angry? Are you losing touch with the people you love? The way these profiles use the word you can be very activating for somebody. It can make them feel more shame. It can make them feel more overwhelmed. It can make them feel defensive. And if they're on their phone and they're reactive, they are going to leave that profile very, very quickly. You have to remember that looking for a therapist is often a very vulnerable space, and your profile should reflect that. You wouldn't want to put somebody in defensive in a therapy room when you even create a safer container for them than just a profile. You're careful about how you activate folks and what feelings you evoke, and that should be true, especially for a profile when you don't have that safe container. But there's a way to use the word you that really works. So on the other side, when we looked at how profiles that perform really well use the word you, they use it to express positive change. So remember the examples I showed you. The first profile, the one that had 2 out of every 3 clients contacting them, they say things like, we want to help you focus on what you need to be happy. We want to relieve the pressure you feel. We want to help you be proud of who you are, right? Those are examples that speak to the word you in a very positive way. They help people see positive change and feel hopeful, right? Rather than feeling shame and defensiveness. And so sometimes we see these profiles that don't perform really well and we look at them and it is just this it sounds like some of those pharmaceutical commercials, right? Like, are you down? Are you, do you not like yourself? Are you losing sense of hope? Like, that's the way we use the word you to read in a really negative place versus really focusing on positive change, the things that you can create for somebody that will help them be their best selves. So that's the third lesson. So we've got use words like we and together, more like I, more than you use words like I or my clients. Have a photo that also makes a connection through eye contact, and use the word you to focus on the hopeful, the good, the optimism, rather than just the negative. We should talk a little bit more about optimism, and this is also really important. It's really important for your profile to focus on the good stuff, right? The changes you make possible for people. Uh, we used to say in communications that good messaging is like 80% positive, 20% about the problem. And I think the same is true for a therapist profile. We want to limit the amount of doom and gloom. We want to limit the pharmaceutical ad type of approach. We want to talk about the inspiring stuff. People already feel down when they're looking for a therapist. They want to know what you can help them do. They want to feel inspired. And doing so is what is going to move them to a place of action in preparing to work with you and contacting you. We have to remember, like, contacting a therapist sometimes requires bravery, and your profile might give them the inspiration they need to be brave and take a step forward. So when we say use words of hope, like focus on the good stuff, what are those? They're action words that are verbs that people desire. They're words like improve, ease, relieve, achieve, develop, love, connect. They are words that show positive change towards something, and that is what people really want to experience. So it is really helpful to use words of hope to show optimism. So let's recount again. We've got use we and together more than you use words like I and my client, because they create a sense of connection. We have a photo that also creates a sense of connection by making eye contact. We have used the word you to create focus on positive change, and not to activate or help or evoke some feelings of shame and defensiveness. And then we have really focused most of your profile on inspiring change that you help people create using some of those action words, those verbs that are the verbs that people want to see in their life. This leads us into our fifth lesson, which is use everyday language and words that you can sense. So in my nonprofit days and the communications days, someone had made this fun little tool. And it was like a plugin for Microsoft Word, and it would underline common nonprofit jargon that was just jargony, and it would use like the little underline, the red underline, like when you misspell a word. And I love that. I really want to create one for therapist profiles because we see so much jargon there. And I want to say, like, jargon isn't just words that people don't understand. To me, jargon is also words I can't really experience. Like, I can't imagine or picture it. I can't feel it. I can't taste it or sense it or smell it. The words that just lack like any kind of emotional connection, right? And so it's really important because so often we see in profiles of therapists thinking they're communicating a point, either about what they do or their approach, and the other person just doesn't hear it. And there's nothing that breaks off that sense of connection more than somebody feeling someone is speaking like a different language, right? If somebody doesn't understand the words, if it feels over their head, that really just breaks that sense of connection that you're really trying to create with somebody. So, there's two ways that we see that jargon. The first is like clinical jargon. Modalities are a really big one, like RODB, even common ones, CBT, EMDR. Some people know what those things are. A lot of people don't. Acronyms around licensure. So, even something as simple as like LCSW versus an LPC, you have so much training about that. And you know exactly what that means, but most people don't. There's like we talk about in communications world, there's a curse of knowledge, which means that once you know something, it's really, really hard to remember what it's like to not know that thing. And it's really hard for you to remember what it's like for somebody who doesn't know what an LPC versus an LCSW is. It's really hard for you to remember what it's like to not know what CBT or DBT are, but most clients don't. And so I laugh. I'll show you some examples here, but I also want to tell you the second way that we see jargon, and those are broad terms that you can't sense, right? So they don't have the emotional impact. They're kind of just clunky words that are really hard for somebody to experience, right? And words that people experience are just more powerful, and they build a connection with the person who's saying it, in this case, you and your profile. So what do I mean by some everyday language? Like, let's look at a couple of examples. These are examples from our site. So you can see on the left, some common language. My approach combines EMDR, rational emotive, and cognitive behavioral theory and approaches. You probably know exactly what that means. Most clients don't. And on the right, you could see the way that that's been rewritten by somebody else, which uses some of those words, but actually provides context that's really easy to understand. So I use a process called EMDR, which can help retrain your body's response to traumatic memories, as well as cognitive behavioral therapy, where you learn to replace unhealthy thoughts with constructive alternatives. The one on the right really speaks to therapy seekers. The one on the left, unless you are very experienced in therapy and have been going for years and love to geek out on it, you probably don't know what that means. There's two ways that I would really encourage you to think about checking your profile for jargon. So the first is just to run it through a grade level language check. And I think you're really looking for like 8th grade, 7th grade language, really simple language. If you're coming in at like a college level, reading level, it's too complex and too jargony for an average therapy seeker who's overwhelmed and scrolling through their phone. The second way you could do this is just talk to a friend who's not a therapist. I love it. I have my Aunt Cindy. She's amazing. She's worked retail her entire life. And I always, when I'm writing something that I'm worried might be a little complex, just send it off to Aunt Cindy. It's my Aunt Cindy test. I just text her and I say, like, what do you know? What do you understand about this? And then she'll write back and say, like, what is rational emotive therapy? I'm like, aha, I forgot that jargon. So, like, I want to show you kind of some jargon in action. So let's go back to the first example. This is the example of the lowest performing profile, the one that's had 400 views in the past couple of months and not a single person contact them. You can see there's definitely some jargon words, like what does integrative approach mean? What does a mind-body approach mean? But more than that, there's a lack of strong feeling words until they bring up joy at the very end. Joy is the only feeling word there, where I read it, I'm like, joy, I know what that is. I can feel joy. Like, they even say something like, you'll gain confidence in the ability to navigate strong emotions that naturally arise in life. And it's like, when I read like negative strong emotions, I should really feel something, right? Like, there should be feeling words, but they're kind of not. Like, what is a negative strong emotion? Why don't we just name that emotion? Is it anxiety? Is it grief? Is it jealousy? Like, name those things. So even rewriting this to say, together we'll gain confidence in the ability to navigate emotions like grief and sadness and anxiety. That would be so much more powerful than just saying navigate strong emotions. So those are 5 big lessons. I want to recap them. The first is use words like we and together more than I and my clients. Because that creates connection. We also make sure to have a profile image that creates connection through eye contact. We use the word you, but only to focus on the good stuff, that inspiring things. We use a lot of very inspiring words, action verbs, words of hope, the things that people want to experience much more than we leave them in like a negative space. And then we use everyday language to help people really relate to what we're saying. We avoid the words that they might not know or the acronyms that they might not know. And we avoid the words that kind of lack that emotional impact and choose words instead that really connect on an emotional level with folks. I want to give you another example that I think does a lot of these things really well. This is a profile on our site that has a 57% view to contact ratio, which means more than one every 2 clients goes on to contact this therapist to work together. And you can see a lot of these examples here. So something to know about my approach is that I've observed significant shifts with people I've worked with. I've witnessed them become more empowered and assertive. The therapy process brings you closer to your authentic self. You'll become calmer, more positive, and hopeful, right? Immediately, we have emotion words that I can feel, and we have a focus on positive emotions. It's everyday language. Together, we will, and it says anything and everything can be discussed during therapy. Most importantly, processing how being sensitive affects your nervous system, living a life that works for you, that does not create overwhelming feelings that have to be constantly managed. Then this goes on to say, I enjoy working with highly sensitive people, neurodivergent, and people who see the world differently. I am passionate about assisting you as you navigate the waters of feeling deeply, feeling alone, rejected, misunderstood, and often exhausted. I became a therapist because I'm very aware of how many people suffer alone with debilitating isolation because the world does not feel safe. Again, there's just so much emotion in this profile, so many feelings words, so many easy words to understand, as well as like a mix of acknowledging negative things and shifting people into a positive mindset about what can be done. I think this profile could be a lot better. There's some weird grammar choices as well, some not complete sentences. They don't talk about togetherness or what we can do. But even these things alone, compared to the profile that had 0 people contact them, this is now more than half of the people contact them. It's a huge, huge shift. And I think it's done just through some of these really simple language choices. Okay, so we have all of our examples now. I know there's a 6th one. I'm going to save it for the very end, but I want to give you a template right now. It's a really simple way that I think is a great way to start off a profile, and can help focus what comes next. It's simple. I specialize in working with people who are blank. And in this place, you could put in anything about your clients who are, 18 through 23, who are new to college, who are facing end of life, who are in chronic pain, like whatever it may be. And then together, we can link. We can help alleviate your pain and find balance and hope again. We can help connect. We can help you connect with your spouse and find love and excitement in your relationship again, whatever it might be. I love that this template is so easy, but it captures so much of what we've been talking about. It's easy to understand. It sets you up in the we framework, that relationship framework. It helps you help people feel reflected in their profile. And then, once you have that, you can elaborate further. Use some of the other prompts that you've seen in mental health match profiles. You can talk more about your experiences. You can talk more about the clients that you like or your approaches. But just even starting, a website, a profile with these 2 simple statements are a really great place to get on the right track with a client and make that initial connection. So like, what does that look in real life? Here's some examples from our site. I specialize in working with people who are new to parenting and feeling overwhelmed with all that it entails. Together, we can help you reconnect with yourself and create new balance in your life. Like, that is what somebody who is new to parenting and feeling overwhelmed wants to hear. Another example is I specialize in working with people who are exploring what they want from new careers and relationships. Together, we can clarify your needs and boundaries and learn new skills to advocate for yourself. So this is a really great template to use. I know there's still this really big question of like, well, what do I write in the first blank spot? Like, who do I specialize in working with people? And this is where it's really important to reflect on your own goals as a therapist, and also where it's really important to remember that therapy seekers want to feel reflected. What that 3rd emotion that we talked about, right? They want to feel hope. They want to feel connection with you as a therapist, which I think we've covered about some ways to do that. But the last thing is that they want to feel reflected in your profile. How do you help someone feel reflected? In my communication days, we would always say, if you try to speak to everyone, you end up speaking to nobody. And this is where we see too many profiles that don't perform well, kind of where they err, is because they do this like laundry list of things like, I work with men, women, non-binary people, and the transgender population who are feeling anxiety, depression, grief, loneliness, like it becomes too much that nobody really actually feels reflected in them, and people want to feel reflected. And so it comes down to really defining a niche, right? We often see this most with new therapists as well. And that's even worse because people might already be doubting your experience and competence if you've only been practicing for a year or two, if you're still under supervision. But the way to go about that is not to just try to list everything possible, but to really define a niche. And I know defining a niche can be scary. And I just want to make the point that when you're defining a niche in your marketing materials, you are not committing your career to something, right? You can change your profile every few months. You can have multiple niches. You could put one niche up on a Psychology Today profile, and one niche up on your mental health batch profile. This isn't committing, writing your career in stone. This isn't really going down a research PhD into a specific need. You can really mix it up. And so I encourage you to try things on. If you aren't sure what the niche is that you want to work with and who the population is that you want to focus your career on, don't worry about it. But to find a niche in your marketing material, whether that's a website or your profile. And so here's a really great example. Someone on the left is a profile on our site that does not perform well at all. I serve people ages 4 to 64 who suffer from depression and anxiety. And so, if you're a 30-something-year-old in there, you're kind of like, I don't know, they see 4-year-olds, they see 6-year-olds, is this person for me? And here's one on the right that I just love this niche. I help working professionals who feel stuck on the job or held back by how their brain functions. My clients include people with ADHD, autism, or learning disabilities. I love it because the one on the right still has a list of terms, but it's under an umbrella. And you'll see this again here. Here's another example. So here's the laundry list, right? It's just a list of presenting issues that you may treat, but it doesn't help somebody feel reflected. Like even if I am suffering from some of these anxiety and grief, I'm also like, but wait, they also do addiction work and family issues and mood regulation and trauma. I don't even know if this person is like for me. I don't feel reflected in that. Versus the one on the right, again, it's that example. My clients, I help women who feel unhappy with their bodies and seek positive relationships with food. My clients include anorexic teens, postpartum moms, menopausal women. It's a broad umbrella of things, but if I am suffering from my relationship with food, I feel really strongly about the one on the right. I'm like, this person is speaking to me versus the one on the left. And so, it's important that you have some kind of niche in your marketing materials. It's okay to list a few issues or populations you work with. For example, you might say, I do individual therapy work with women who are unhappy with their bodies. And I also do couples work, with relationships where there's been infidelity. You can do both of those. It's limited, just those couple of things. I'll say that Mental Health Match is working on a way that for you to have multiple profiles so that, your couples profile and your individual profile might be separate so that you have those different ones that can show to folks, because we do ask our therapy seekers to fill out a quick survey about their needs. So we know who's looking for couples therapy. We know what they're looking for. So we make sure you show the right profile to them. But even without that kind of a feature, if it's on your website or if it's on a Psychology Today profile, it's really important just to have some focus where you really help people feel reflected in your profile. If you want some more guidance in this, we have another free guide. This step-by-step guide will walk you through developing some sample niches and some statements about those niches. And it helps solve the Goldilocks problem, which is like, you want a niche that's not too broad or too small. When you go too small, you're excluding folks. When you go too broad, you're excluding them because you're not connecting with their own specific needs or reflecting them. And so this guide, again, completely free. You don't even have to put in email address or anything like that. Just go check it out if you want to go further down this road. But that is very much the sixth lesson that I wanted to share with you, which is it's really important for you to have a niche. So, again, just to recap, therapy seekers are coming to your profile feeling overwhelmed, uncertain, and alone. And what they really want to feel from your profile and the profiles that perform really well, help them feel hope, connection, and reflected. And the 6 ways that you can do that are to use words of connection, like we and together, have a photo that creates connection through eye contact, use the word you to really connect and validate and offer hope without activating around some of those like shame or defensiveness issues. Use words of hope that show those verbs of what you want people to achieve. Use everyday language that emotionally resonates, and have and articulate a niche. So I know Mental Health Match, you've seen profile prompts, but like, what about some of the other profiles? What about other directories? What about your website? Here is what we recommend. And when I talk about a niche statement, I actually talk about the statement, the template that we just looked at, which is, I specialize in working with people who are blank, and together we can blank. If you've got just a quick version, you've got a few sentences to fill out, use that niche statement, and then add a little bit more about, your passions as a therapist, or why you've become a therapist. If you've got like a longer box to fill out, maybe it's a Psychology Today profile that just has you with a blank screen, start with your niche statement again, and then share more about your expertise. What have you done? Who are the clients that you've seen that you've worked most well with? What have you helped them achieve? And then again, finish with some passions and about why you became a therapist. And then the longer version, maybe like for a website, start with that niche statement, and then share a little bit more about your training, your expertise, add in some other details about what you offer, like maybe groups or retreats or coaching or consultation with other organizations. Maybe you want to fill in some anonymous stories about things you've helped achieve from your clients, and then again, finish with your passions and why you became a therapist. So in the last thing that I want to do for you, I want to share you one more example that I think does a lot of things really well. This one is completely new on our site. It just put up last week, but so far, every single client who has seen this profile has contacted this therapist, 100%, every single one of them. So, you can expect a warm and non-judgmental place to freely express yourself. With me, therapy won't feel so intimidating. I take a problem-solving approach to treating mental health. Using evidence-based tools, we'll find what works for you and managing your stressors and mental health symptoms to give you back control. Together, we'll explore what changes you want for yourself and make a plan to get you there. Through our work, you'll learn more about yourself and what you need for a happy, healthy life. I specialize in working with people who need help processing major life changes or major stressors. I also work with people who need help managing their anxiety and finding ways to build back their self-confidence. I became a therapist because I know the importance of having someone to talk to when things get hard. And then more about me, I try to make therapy feel open and manageable. I know a lot of people come in not knowing what to expect and can be nervous about opening up about themselves. In my practice, we go at a steady pace while respecting your boundaries. I love everything about this profile. It is using emotional language, right? It is using very simple language. It is creating connections through a lot of we words. It is using the word you to talk about some things, some optimism. You'll learn more about yourself. You manage your stressors, give you back control. And I think, I think it could go further in having a niche, but I think that this niche is really well, like specializing in people who need help managing anxiety and finding ways to build back self-confidence. So I think this is a stellar example. I'm really excited for this profile. And again, I've never seen it before, but every single client who sees this profile has contacted this therapist. So I think in the last few minutes, we're going to have a quick Q&A. And just reminder that if you're interested in trying to get some more clients through Mental Health Match, you can join here and get 60 days free and it's 15% off your first 6 months.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I hope everyone learned a lot today. So as mentioned before, we will get into questions, and just so everyone knows, I will be sending a follow-up email to everyone that's attended today. So you will be getting all these resources, including the link for the discount. So no need to go back on these slides and try and type in the links exactly. Everything will be sent to your email. So let's get into questions. I'm just going to go in order from earliest to latest ask. So just the first few questions. We actually do have a few therapists here, Ryan, who are already Mental Health Match users and are wondering if they can take advantage of the discount codes, or is this just for new users?
No, we will absolutely extend it to you if you are already signed up. If you want to get the discount, just write us at support@mentalhealthmatch.com, and we'll apply that code to your account.
Cool. And I'll make sure to put that email address in the follow-up email so everyone can contact that. Great. So next question that we have here is from Elizabeth Buckley, is wondering, so I do a lot of EMDR. What worlds do you suggest using to talk about it?
Got it. I'm gonna make an assumption here that you're asking about words, Elizabeth, and not worlds.
Words.
I'm gonna assume so. I was also like marketing worlds and like where do you market yourself? But we're gonna assume that's words. So I would say, talk about new proven techniques that can help you retrain your body's response to traumatic memories. I think that one's a really good one. Talk about the way that you are using the latest like brain science about how to change responses to those memories. I think that those go a long way for folks in helping them understand what exactly EMDR is. I wouldn't get into like the bilateral stimulation or eye movement pieces of things. I think that that's like a little too sciencey without really delivering what a client actually wants to know, which is how you're going to help them and how things are going to be better off when they come see you.
Cool. Next question we have here is from Rafa, who's wondering the following. So Rafa's question is, I wonder if the technical words such as EMDR or CBT would be helpful to narrow down your population. I get many people who are looking for specific certification when they contact me. What do you think about using those to target a population?
So I would say like use those words and then use them in like define what they are. We know that, so we have abilities. People can search for certain modalities. Most people don't know what they want or what they're looking for, and occasionally, we get users like, I know I want EMDR, and there's other filters and ways to search for somebody who offers EMDR. Like I think most profiles will allow you to put you practice EMDR as a modality, and then give somebody a filter to look at that. In our search process, we ask people about that. We also ask them in non-clinical ways about that. But I guess what I'm saying is the people who we know are a smaller percent of the population who know that they want EMDR or CBT, or think that they know that that's what they want, have ways to find you with that. But a lot of people don't know what they want and they don't know those words. So you can use them, but then add context, right? I offer, EMDR, which is a proven technique that helps you retrain your brain's response to traumatic memories or something like that.
Awesome. Next question we have here is from Fabiola. Question is, what if your ideal client does have a high education background? Do I still stick to that eighth grade level talk track that you mentioned?
Yes, they don't have a clinical background. You know what I mean? Unless you are if you are a therapist who only sees other therapists, use clinical jargon because your audience knows it. If you see anybody else who's not a therapist, it doesn't matter if they have a PhD and whatever, they don't have a clinical background. And so that's going to help make sure that you're still speaking to them and what they know and understand.
That's it for the questions. Ryan, thank you so much. And thank you for going 15 minutes over. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone learned a lot today. As a reminder, I will be sending everyone who attended today and people who couldn't attend a follow-up email, which will include all the resources we went over with those guides included that Ryan mentioned. And you'll have the links to sign up for Mental Health Match. Again, as a reminder, you'll receive 15% off your first 6 months after you get 2 months free as well. So make sure to sign up with that link. And if you are already using Mental Health Match, make sure to email support@mentalhealthmatch.com. I'll also put that email in my follow-up email. That way you can also take advantage of this discount if you already created an account. That's it for me. Ryan, any closing remarks?
No, it was really great to connect with you. I hope I get to connect with some of you after this webinar as well. And Headway, thanks for having us.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Take care.